My presentation is going to be probably picking up on a lot of the threads from this morning and also from what Andrew and Marie have just been talking about as well, but taking it to a local government perspective, specifically within the economic development arena. So just to put it into some context, in terms of economic development, within the city of the Gold Coast, we're very fortunate in being the largest economic development agency at a local government level within Australia. So very well supported at a local government level. In terms of our city, we've just endorsed a new vision for the city, which is inspired by lifestyle, driven by opportunity, and having three key pillars within our draft city plan, which are based around place, people, and for us, most importantly, prosperity. So which has really lifted the economic agenda within the city going forward. So with that in mind, we have a current economic development strategy through to 2020, but we took the opportunity with changes at a local and state level of government, along with impacts of things such as the GFC, to take a step back. And over the last 4 months, we've been reviewing the city's economic development strategy, which will take us through to 2023, so over the next 10 years. So the vision within that strategy is to deliver diversity, drive productivity, and inspire entrepreneurialism. And it's really sticking with the theme of the current strategy in terms of diversification. So although we still have our key pillars within the city in terms of retail, tourism and construction, those are the pillars that have been most impacted through economic impacts such as the global financial crisis. So there's a real need to maintain that diversification and look at key critical areas where we have niche opportunities, particularly moving away from a population-driven economy and moving into more of what we call a driver sector economy. So much more focused around where the city has opportunities in the global marketplace, and it's not just about serving our own internal markets and population, but looking outwardly and true globalisation, particularly for the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit within the city. Through the research that we undertook over the last 4 to 5 months, 3 key challenges were identified in terms of the economy around productivity and efficiency, business and investor confidence, and that diversification. That's led us to identify 5 key priorities, and the top line one there in terms of being that real opportunity to be an Asia-Pacific innovation hub and to be a real entry point in terms of that expansion of the innovation that's happening organically in the city, and how government can work with private industry and business in terms of facilitating those opportunities. So linking into our other program areas in terms of global connections and export, that driver sector economy again, looking at being truly open for business and being a business-friendly environment and trying to change policy, but also work as ourselves as an economic development team in terms of engaging with local business and actually being able to act proactively on their behalf and facilitate opportunities. So really focusing on what the city offers as a lifestyle and being able to promote that and raise the city profile, which historically has been based around the tourism pillar, but can become more around the actual business, entrepreneurship, innovation, and activities that are happening at a business level, which are really quite unique in terms of global economies. Not sure how easy that is to read. In terms of the economic development strategy going forward, we've moved away from having key industries that we focus on. Traditionally, one of those has been ICT, along other areas such as health and medical, education, sport. And we've really tried to look at how some of those are core enablers, but we're actually undermining the skills and opportunities for the city by being fixated around trying to serve across a range of industries, rather than looking more strategically at themes where there's a crossover, particularly in areas of IT, health and education for the city that cross over several areas and impact on a lot of industry sectors. So the 6 core themes that I'm not sure you can read on that slide are innovation, cultural capital, infrastructure, competitive business, workforce and skills, and globalisation. So from that core vision and those 6 core themes, we've then identified signature projects across the city, and then there are implementation frameworks, and I'll go into more detail into obviously the one that's the theme for today in terms of innovation and commercialisation. So councils at a local government level has now made a real commitment in terms of that being a key driver for the city's economy over the next decade and going forward. And what are our key signature projects that the city wishes to endorse at an economic level as well as a city plan going forward level? So one of those ones that we've been talking about quite a bit today and was mentioned earlier by Orlando is our Pacific Innovation Corridor program, which has been running for the last decade, but has been generally focused around the linear nature of the city. I can probably just flick through, which I do have some hard copies of this if anyone wants one today, but obviously you'll have access to this presentation. But it's really due to the challenge of the city being of that linear, dispersed nature and not having a core central business area. It's been historically grown through the efforts of council as well as and working with industry in terms of business clusters, so things like our marine sector, our film and creative sector, the aviation area around the airport. But we've now moved it, twisted around a little bit and focused more on how that offers us opportunities as an innovation ecosystem. So now looking at where there's organic emergence of knowledge hubs, education hubs with our 3 key universities within the city has really enabled us to focus in on what we've termed, we didn't copy from anyone obviously, a research triangle. So in terms of being able to really look at where there's research and development occurring across the city within the 3 universities, making sure that's of a complementary nature, linking that to business and really looking for solutions both within the city itself but also from a global perspective and a business solutions perspective. So we've actually got engagement programs with each of those universities, which was a question that was asked this morning, and each university has obviously its unique strengths and niches, so the programs vary between each three of them in terms of scholarship programs, linking business with industry, running PhD programs alongside business requirements to create real-time business solutions within the city. Also focusing around what the cost is to the city in terms of creating innovation-based jobs and lifting up that capacity of knowledge workers within the city and really focusing in on that entrepreneurial spirit and where there's commercial opportunities. So we work with, obviously, within the universities, bodies like Griffith Enterprise in terms of the IP and patents and the trademarking of opportunities that is research coming through, but also looking at how we can support startups and commercial ideas and opportunities within the city. And obviously there's the continual issue around venture capital support and how we can really, again, lift the profile of the city globally from that innovation perspective, which will not only assist our companies that are already trading overseas, but also the ability to have that recognition as it's a great place for ideas to be taken to market, and it's an area where investors should be paying some attention. I'll just go through some. So in terms of that commercialisation and startup network, as I mentioned, the Pacific Innovation Corridor has traditionally been focused around sector clustering and is more so now going forward going to be around that ability to facilitate and speed up commercialisation across the city. So really trying to focus in on where there's startup activity and links with the business as well, and trying to both create the infrastructure in terms of nodes, both within the universities and within business precincts, but also in terms of that investment and through our investment attraction scheme, attracting research or actually identifying what research we want to bring into the city or where there's natural synergies with our global partners, particularly through our international sister city linkages, and actually facilitating and making the most of those opportunities. And I think alumni was mentioned this morning at one point, and we're really going into that space now in terms of where skills have been developed in the city and have left, and there's an extensive alumni, particularly from Griffith University, in terms of international residents who are now located within large corporations or businesses globally, and there's a real opportunity to both bring those companies in terms of potential headquarters or a presence within Australia and ideally the Gold Coast through our investment attraction scheme, but also the ability to link activities that are happening in those companies with businesses that are currently located within the city. That doesn't look too clear either, but in terms of the Pacific Innovation Corridor, we've been doing a lot of work with the innovation community within the city in terms of think tanks and running some monthly sessions with a group of both people from universities, from business, and from the emerging co-working spaces within the city, and have come up with sort of 5 key objectives within the innovation and commercialisation program itself. So in terms of lifting that capability, being able to retain and develop that knowledge, accelerate commercialisation, develop and support those local innovation capabilities so they can remain within the city and grow within the city and stay within the city, and also to create a real dynamic community. So how do we achieve that? So we've started implementing, as I mentioned, with the universities, but also across business, a range of support programs and networks, looking at how we can try and lift the profile again in terms of that venture capitalist support, things like the Angels Network, but also look at alternatives ways of bringing potential investors into the city and really selling the story at that high level. And also running a range of events, such as this conference, in terms of trying to get the profile lifted and the community brought together, because, as we mentioned before, there's only so much a local government can and should be doing. We should just be there to be facilitating and supporting as much as we can, particularly at that local government level, in terms of being the hands-on support for business and trying to just achieve the city's objectives as a whole. So at the moment we're doing a lot of work with startups, with a range of entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, with the co-working facilities that are emerging across the city, and incubators and accelerator programs, and also the 3 key universities, which really offer a key point of difference for the Gold Coast. So in terms of enabling that process, we're looking at an economic infrastructure plan for the city in terms of prioritising both the core elements of infrastructure, but also how we can create that connectivity, which is so critical in terms of the linear nature of the city, but it's also that education, that connectivity isn't necessarily about the geography of the city, it's how we just communicate to each other and come together in that area of collaboration. Also looking at things like the planning scheme and zoning opportunities and how we have a real strategic intent within our economic development strategy, but aligning that with the tools that are in place from a planning perspective in terms of the city, so that we're matching up the type of businesses we're trying to bring in, but also then enabling that to be an easy way of coming in and operating. And a very key focus around skills and workforce development, so that we're also generating the skills that business need going forward, and that the skills can be retained within the city rather than being lost. So I just thought I'd go through a few of our key projects as a local government in the innovation space, and how we work collaboratively to try and facilitate. And most people would have heard mention, particularly around the Com Games at the moment, in terms of the Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct, which has been a project that local government has been working with state government and Griffith University quite extensively over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's changed its guises in many ways over that period of time. The emergence of the new university hospital within the 200-hectare precinct has really enabled and provided a real true health and knowledge focus for it. So that's created the ability, but it's very much dependent obviously on a lot of different stakeholders' agendas and priorities going forward, and also a lot of focus has been placed on the Health and Knowledge Precinct in terms of generating knowledge jobs for the city. But really, to put it into perspective, even if the precinct was to deliver the targets that have been set, which at the moment are around the 8,000 knowledge-based jobs, once it is fully completed and activated, is still only 10% of the city's current economic development strategy targets in terms of creating knowledge-based jobs over the next 10 years. In terms of council's role, we've very much been the coordination point in terms of developing a strategy specifically for that 200-hectare precinct in Southport, and having some very clear defined goals and aims and objectives which have stayed true for the majority of the project, both in terms of what the outcomes should be, but also from a perspective in terms of sector, obviously the health and knowledge, but also environment, engineering, IT and sports science, and then to have some real implementation plans around that in terms of joint venture opportunities for public investment for that infrastructure. And again, that global profiling, this is a one-off opportunity to create something that really is world-class. In terms of the precinct itself, the area outlined in yellow is the current Parklands Trust site, so that's the real critical component of the precinct in terms of being able to draw together the activities of the university, the activities of the new university hospital, by providing an avenue of synergies for businesses to be located within the precinct, for research agencies, and linked operations to be within the precinct, and obviously for a level of collaboration, co-working, incubation spaces. So that's really been the goal of the council's role within this process, to really keep that at the front of the agenda. As most people would be aware, we will be running the Commonwealth Games here within the city in 2018, and that site has actually been identified for the Games Village. So it provides a positive message in terms of a real opportunity for the Games Village to be located there in terms of some residency component. The issue is now around making sure we continue that advocacy for the true outcomes envisaged for the use of that greenfield site. So with the declaration of that piece of land under the Economic Development Act last year as a priority development area from February this year, looking at how we can really use the interim land planning tool in terms of facilitating any staged opportunities. So there is a risk in that there won't be any staged land opportunities prior to the Commonwealth Games, which means we're obviously in a bit of limbo with that project until the Games are complete in 2018, but our role at the moment is trying to work with the various stakeholders and align our priorities for the legacy of that site alongside the priorities, obviously, to deliver a Games Village in time for the Commonwealth Games. Another one of our projects is around funding collaboration in the innovation space, is the Gold Coast Innovation Centre, which is based at Griffith University, which was established in 2006, both with our support through a state government funding program, and also with Griffith University. So that's been running for the last 5 to 6 years in terms of startup companies in technology-based fields to really support them and mentor them through a startup process to establish outside of the centre. 31 new companies have been created through that process, and there's a range of alumni that support that centre itself. We're currently looking in terms of the next stages. As I mentioned, the Pacific Innovation Corridor is really focused around an ecosystem and how we connect and move forward in terms of the physicality of innovation centres versus the ability to have just areas that are open for collaboration, and then having the support around them in terms of venture capitalists, mentoring and acceleration programs. Which leads me into, I suppose, the organic collaboration, where we've seen natural growth in terms of co- and smart working and flexible teleworking facilities across the city. In Southport, we have co-working, which I think Ben Howe is here from that facility. We also have Tech Space, and we also have Silicon Lakes, which all offer different varying levels of a way of supporting and encouraging innovation within the city. So it's been an area we've been very focused in on the last 2 to 3 years after seeing the trends emerge, where spaces have continually doubled year in, year out over the last 6 years. And just as a way, particularly from the perspective of our new economic development strategy, the issue of self-containment and the ease of doing business and productivity all mixed up in terms of a way of really looking at different ways of working and not having people in terms of having to travel long journeys or leave the city in terms of getting the work, or having the opportunity to work within the place that they live, whether it be on a part-time basis or full-time, or how flexible their work environment can be. But these programs really offer up that opportunity to both encourage self-containment within the city and enable those skill base and that collaboration to really be nurtured and stay within the city while linking globally, but also through providing those flexible collaborative working spaces. So we're trying to balance up in terms of the very formal research-based commercialisation activities of the universities, but build programs around them that make the business environment come to the universities and vice versa. So we're actually creating research in the city that is going to solve real business problems and solutions. And as Malcolm mentioned, we have been working as a city with the Future Cities Institute for a few years now in terms of looking at global opportunities and how we could link into other partners' innovation systems globally to offer more opportunities for our city's own innovation. So we established ourselves as the Gold Coast Asia Pacific Centre for Intelligent Cities last year, and one of those initiatives that fell out of that was our partnership with Microsoft in terms of developing the dashboard that Malcolm showed you earlier and talked you through, but also in terms of a range of activities and support programs, both with universities, but also in terms of the business community itself and how Council's business engagement team embrace and encourage the innovation component as well as the export components with our businesses. So the deliverables of that partnership over the last 12 months have been the establishment of the dashboard, which we're currently working through in terms of now open access in terms of businesses within the city being able to upload their own information so that we can create a real moving dynamic use of the dashboard. And as someone mentioned, mayors do love to have that sort of thing to refer to and how show the benchmarking globally. So it's been a real way of us demonstrating at a political level in terms of how innovation can work and benefit the city, and what an impact it can have at an economic level, particularly for a city like the Gold Coast. And also the summit that we're here to today was an outcome of that initiative and those discussions. So the way that we intend to use the dashboard going forward, it'll be part of the draft city plan in terms of a true measurable for how we are performing. So we'll be able to use the information collectively in terms of ourselves as a city and benchmarking against the other Microsoft innovation centres, as Malcolm mentioned, globally, but also being able to drill down to specific activities. So for example, our co-working space, Silicon Lakes, etc., will be able to have their own access and see how they're trending over time. Just another area of program that we focus in on, obviously it's great to have the innovation, but we want to be able to keep it within the city. And as Hugh mentioned earlier, in terms of that ability to try and raise the aspirations and sell the excitement about working in IT or ICT and how we look at those different messages has been an area that uniquely that we've been embracing as an economic development branch for the last 2 years in terms of skills development. So we've had a Tech GC program running for that time, so focusing in on science, technology, engineering, maths, and recently with the addition of the arts as well, in terms of raising aspirational levels within the city, but also working with the universities in terms of what their skill programs are, and also from a business. So we're creating that pipeline of skill-based development within those facilities, but also then enabling the jobs to be available as much as we can forecast within those spaces. And that's where we're also looking at opportunities like the Commonwealth Games, the emergence of light rail within the city, and other infrastructure development opportunities that lead us down pathways of particular skill areas. So the way forward, as I mentioned, with the economic development strategy is really has been that elevation away from just talking about ICT industry, IT industry within the current strategy, and really looking at for what the value add is in terms of economic output and the economic drivers for the city from that globalisation approach and how we can link with other areas. So it's that continued collaboration, and we've been running a series of think tanks for various subjects on topics over the last 12 months, and the innovation one has really been the one that's really just the interest and the momentum and the build-up of that community and the way that people want to embrace in that space has been outstanding. And as I say, we met that group are now meeting monthly in terms of the way forward and how we can have some clear actions that are shared, not just for local government to do, but for those actual individuals all to take on board a role within that process. So it's really about bringing people together and finding those opportunities, and just being able to raise the profile and sell that message at a political level in terms of budget and allocations and support that we're then able to offer those programs, but also in terms of an implementation through our business engagement team. I think that's, yeah. Thank you.